Are you looking for a way to make co-parenting easier? Talking Parents can help you streamline your shared parenting responsibilities and minimize conflict by keeping all interactions organized and documented. With Talking Parents, you can stop worrying about the he said, she said, and focus on what matters most, your children. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store and start a 30-day free trial today. Welcome back. We're talking about tech meets parenting today. Talking Parents, how Talking Parents supports healthy co-parenting. Now, as many of you know, co-parenting communication can often be challenging and sometimes challenging at best. And there can be hostile exchanges, there can be miscommunication, there could be the need to prove and have evidence of communication that's happened. And this is just one of the areas that Talking Parents really supports you in. And so one of the most trusted platforms in the co-parenting app space is Talking Parents. And today I have the pleasure of speaking to Stephen Nixon, the founder of Talking Parents. He has a rich background in law. Before he founded Talking Parents, he served both as an assistant state attorney and an assistant public defender in Florida. You can read all about today's episode and Stephen's background in the show notes. We're going to dive right in. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Stephen, I'm so excited about today's conversation. Before we dive into that, I like to ask each of my guests to share something personal about themselves with the listeners. I understand that you have a side gig as an unpaid taxi cab driver.
That's right. I have two boys. I have a 14-year-old, almost 15, in ninth grade, and another one who is in sixth grade, who's 11 going on 12. And the younger one has recently started playing traveling soccer. And so I spend most of my late afternoons and evenings going to practices and most of my weekends driving somewhere for some sort of soccer game. That feels like about the only thing I do anymore.
Yes, and I feel you. I had a daughter who was on two travel teams, and there was no time to even do food shopping or laundry. I was just always on one soccer field or another.
That's right.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. Let's dive in. For those who don't understand or know anything about it, can you just talk about the concept of these co-parenting apps and why that's a good thing for a parent emerging from divorce to consider?
Sure, yeah. The original idea for Talking Parents came to me when I was practicing family law. My background was mainly in criminal law, and I started a law practice with my brother, and he was doing family law, and I was doing criminal law. He ended up leaving the practice, and I sort of inherited the family law practice. And it became very quickly apparent that almost all of my clients, especially all the ones who had children in common, were suffering the ill effects of poor communication. There was just poor communication in every one of these cases. And more often than not, it was the poor communication that was leading to the litigation itself. And it was actually after a particularly difficult hearing. We had a hearing set for an entire afternoon. It was a custody issue. They wanted to do a modification. The parents were arguing over extracurricular activities. And we had 4 hours set out for this hearing. You know, the both of the parties had paid a great deal of money to their lawyers, and we came in to do the hearing, and I had my big stack of stuff from my client, all the emails they had tried to print out, the text messages they had tried to print out. This was a long time ago, so they had MySpace messages and things, and sit there and introduce a document. We would show it to the other party like you do in court before something goes into evidence, and they would take it, they would look at it for a few minutes, and then they would think, well, hold on now, I definitely replied to that. Do you have my reply? Well, no, we don't have your reply. Well, let me look through my stack of papers. And the other side would start going through their stack of papers. And this just went on and on. Sometimes they would dig in their stack for 10 minutes and then say, oh, I can't find it, but I'm sure it's there. Or maybe they'd dig for 10 minutes and be like, oh, here it is. I found it. And then they'd pass it over to us, and I would show it to my client, and they would say, well, I never got this. Well, look here, this was sent to a different email address. Or hold on, let me look. And then 10 minutes later, maybe they find it and say, well, I've got it here, but this says it was sent 3 days after they say that they sent it. And we burned through the entire 4 hours. It was a complete waste of time and money and resources and everything. And the judge at the end of that hearing dismissed our clients and talked to myself and the other attorney and said, one of you has got to figure out a way for these people to talk to each other somehow where everything is in writing and this doesn't happen again, where I just have a good record of what they're saying to each other. And so I went back to my office and figured, well, surely that must exist, some service where they could talk to each other and keep one record that is readily available at all times to both parties. Couldn't find it. So that's where I got the idea to build Talking Parents. And it was really to overcome that issue of every one of these clients telling you, about this history of communication with the other party, and usually how some miscommunication, or just maybe even some purposely bad communication, had led to whatever sort of legal issue that we were now going to litigate. And we would tell the client, go get me these emails, go get me these text messages if you can, get me these Facebook message printouts, whatever you can get. And then they would spend a huge amount of time digging through all of these accounts, trying to find this stuff. Usually couldn't find it, or couldn't find all of it. And then they would come back in later with just the messiest, biggest stack of stuff. And then I, as the attorney, you're burning through the retainer just trying to make sense of any of this and to put it together and to find the relevant pieces of it. And then even once you've done that, even if you as the lawyer have done a great job with your stack, when you go into court and the other side has their own stack and things start going back and forth, it's just a mess. It was just an incredible mess. And I wanted a way to resolve that issue. And just a simple service for messaging. At the time, smartphones weren't really a thing. In fact, I don't even think I had a BlackBerry yet. And so it was all on the computer, and I created Talking Parents. People could sign in and talk to each other, and then they couldn't delete anything that they had said. They couldn't edit any of their messages. And then if they needed a copy of the record, there would only be the one record. Rather than each party having sort of their own version of the record, there would just be that single individual Talking Parents record if they had to go back to court.
Well, you know what I love about your response is I was divorced in 2006 and I was using some kind of a shared parenting calendar. I don't know how much communication it had, but I've never thought about that end of it. So you just described something, and I'm such an advocate of these apps, but you just described how these apps, and specifically Talking Parents, has really diminished the amount of expense and time just showing evidence of the communication. Forget about whether it's manipulated or it's abusive or whatever, but just that the amount of time and money just to prove communication sounds like it was exorbitant at times.
That's absolutely right. And what I found is that even though I was originally looking at it from the perspective of a lawyer who's going into court and dealing with evidence, and I didn't want to look through these stacks of stuff, and I didn't want to burn through my client's retainer because then it would just run out and there'd be nothing left. And I didn't want to go into court and have these hearings that were just a waste of time. And so I was coming at it from very much of an evidentiary perspective. How can I get better evidence for going into court? And the obvious result of that is that it saves your clients, it saves the parents involved a huge amount of money because they're not having to pay their lawyer nearly as much to spend time going through that stuff. And their case is much more likely to get resolved through mediation if they've got a perfect record of everything that they said to each other. And even if it doesn't get resolved and they do have to litigate it and they do have to go to a hearing, if what would have been a 4-hour hearing turns into a 2-hour hearing, that's a big deal. That's a significant time savings for the parents. And then what we found also is that for courts often order people to use Talking Parents partially to improve the relationship between the parents, but also to save themselves time and money. Family law dockets are backed way up, and people are always shocked when they've got a family law issue, even like a modification or something that feels pretty simple, and the court date is like 2 years out. And there's an incredible backlog on those dockets. And so courts will often ask people to use Talking Parents or require them to use Talking Parents just in the hope that fewer of them will come back to court. And then when they do come back to court, it will save them some time on those hearings. So that's the evidentiary side of it, the lawyer side of it. But
Absolutely.
the other result of that evidence, of that accountability that's created by our records, is that people hopefully do take the communications a little bit more seriously and put a little bit more effort into them and try and be responding in a timely manner, try and stay on topic, try and avoid the hurtful or off-topic kind of language that you often see going back and forth between co-parents. And then hopefully that will encourage them to resolve more issues on their own without having to go back to court. Hopefully avoid threats of litigation that may go back and forth because they know that there's that record and there's that accountability. And so what you end up with is, because of the accountability, because of the I don't want to say threat, but the threat of having great evidence when you go to court, it encourages people to communicate more effectively, which leads to a better co-parenting relationship. And
Right.
so the parents end up happier, they're more mentally healthy. And then when the parents are communicating more effectively and are being healthier, then that feeds into the kids. And so the children in those relationships are healthier and happier because the parents aren't arguing about everything because they're resolving more stuff through talking parents. And they also have the peace of mind that those records are there if something comes up and they do have to go to court. So it ends up being highly beneficial on several different levels.
Right. So let's piece this out. So the first thing is in many cases where people aren't using an app, they could be on email, they could be using more than one email address, they could be emailing and then shifting to texting and a lot of other variations. So the communication is all over the place. Let's talk about the bells and whistles of talking parents and how each one leads to this end that you're talking about, which is less conflict and contention, more evidence, better for everyone involved. So on that one piece, if I sign up for Talking Parents, am I committing to communicate only through Talking Parents? How does that piece work? Divorce feels like an overwhelming perfect storm as you navigate pain, fear, and confusion while struggling with unfamiliar legal procedures and the pressure to make complex decisions that will impact the rest of your life. Our free Rapid Relief Call provides the clarity and confidence you're yearning for. Visit rapidreliefcall.com for support and guidance today.
When it comes to actually using the service, it's really wide open. A lot of our users are court ordered. They're required to use it. A lot of our users agree to use the service and then incorporate that agreement into an agreement that's filed with the court, like a marital settlement agreement that is then ratified by a court order. So they are required to use it. Lots of our users just sign up and use it on their own because they want the benefits of using the service. And so if you don't have a court order to use it, a parent can just bring it up with the other parent and say, hey, I would like to try using this service. Let's just give it a try and see what we think about it. There are benefits to it because you can keep all of these conversations, all of these documents that you may need to share, all the information about the kids. It all stays in one place. So rather than having text messages and emails and Facebook messages and things constantly coming through on your phone all day about the kids from your co-parent, that can be stressful. It can be hard to keep up with. And Talking Parents puts all of that in one place. So it's just all going to be in the app. And then you also have the peace of mind in knowing that everything that happens through Talking Parents is perfectly documented in one of our records. And so you can let the other parent know that there are benefits here, that this isn't, I'm not trying to set you up. This is good for both of us. This, I think, can help us resolve more issues on our own. It'll give us the peace of mind in knowing that if we have to go back to court or something, this could save us a lot of money. And that's really what I find. Sometimes one parent is very interested in the sort of usefulness of the tool. They just really want to use the shared calendar. They want to have the messages there. Maybe they want the other parent to stop writing them about the kids through Facebook or texting them about it and email. They don't like having all that stuff spread out. They're really focused on improving that shared parenting relationship. They're very focused on that side of it. Sometimes the co-parent in that situation doesn't care about that stuff, or maybe they specifically don't like that stuff because the other parent does. And so the one parent wants to use it for all those reasons. They think, well, those reasons are dumb. I don't care about any of that. That parent, that kind of a parent, is often very receptive to the other side of it, which is like, this will save you a lot of money. This will save you a lot of time and a lot of money down the road. Think about if we have a disagreement anytime down the road. It could be a year from now, it could be 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now or more, depending on how old your kids are. If we've been using this service, it'll save you a lot of headache and a lot of time and a lot of money if we've been using it. And sometimes parents who weren't receptive to some of the other stuff are very receptive to that. So I would say that if you're trying to convince the other parent why they should use Talking Parents or give them some reasons to try it out, those are two different ways to approach it.
So Talking Parents has a number of different elements to it. One thing I'm hearing is you have the calendar, which is incredibly helpful. And so communication around swapping time or going on vacation or anything like that is all done in the same app where you have access to your parenting schedule. Is that correct?
That's right.
Your kids may not be the only ones taking tests this year. SoberLink is the #1 alcohol monitoring device on the market for parents who need to prove their sobriety. Here's how it works. Your co-parent will test at scheduled times each day. Built-in facial recognition confirms their identity. Tamper sensors flag any attempts to cheat, and results get sent instantly to your phone. So you know your kids are with a sober parent, whether it's during school nights or weekends away. Set your family up for success this school year. Visit soberlink.com/JBD to learn more and get $50 off your device.
When Talking Parents was first created, it was just messaging. That was really my focus, was their ability to talk to each other and to keep that perfect record. And over the years, we've added a lot of cool features that I'll talk about. But one thing that is constantly overriding anytime that we build a new feature, we are always focused on the record. And every single feature that you use through Talking Parents, you can get a record of that activity. So you're not just taking screenshots, you're not just printing out like the shared calendar that you would see. You can actually get a calendar record that will log everything that either parent ever put on the calendar, every edit they ever made to any of those entries, and every entry that was ever deleted by either parent. And so when you're using the calendar in the app, it's smooth. It's like any other shared calendar that you can imagine. But then the record will show if the other parent is changing something at the last second, if they don't put stuff on the calendar until the last second, if they're changing details, if they're deleting events at the last second. They could be doing that maliciously. They could just be doing it. They're just being sloppy with it, or they're being lazy with it, and they're not putting the effort into it that they should. And that can be very frustrating if you're using a shared calendar with somebody and they're constantly doing this. And you're like, I wish I could like show somebody how this is happening.
Right.
And that's what our records do, because everything there is logged. And so again, that accountability hopefully would encourage someone to not do that. If they know it's being logged and they know that it's going to be on that record, hopefully they will avoid that kind of behavior. That's the hope. And then if they don't, you've got the record. Or if there's an argument about something that happened, you've got the record. And so our calendars are kept on perfect, complete records. Our information library, where parents can post little cards with the kind of information about the kids that you're constantly needing: doctor's office numbers, school contact information, extracurricular activity contact information, things like that. That might be a feature that you would expect on a service like this, but also there's a record for it. So if the other parent is posting things through there, maybe they post something mean and say something horrible on one of those cards and then delete it. That'll be on the record. You can't do anything through the service that isn't logged.
Well, the other thing that you just said that I think is so helpful is often the non-primary parent, maybe the primary earner, doesn't know all of the kids' friends and the doctor's name and all of this. And there's that whole back and forth. Now, my audience tends to be very high conflict. So the more back and forth, the harder it is. But if you put all of that stuff on the app, then the response can be, right, it's on the app. The schedule is on the app. The doctors that the kids' friends are on the app. Like there could be so much less communication in the areas where it could create conflict and contention.
They don't have to be constantly going back and forth asking a million times for that stuff, because it's all just right there where they need it. And even talking about our records, that extends to probably our coolest feature, our newer feature, is parents can actually make phone calls through the app now. So you can make a voice call or a video call right through the Talking Parents app. And then you can get a copy of your call record that shows every time that one of the parents tried to initiate a call, whether it went through, and then how long it lasted, if it did go through. And then each call itself gets recorded, and then that gets saved as a separate file. But then that file gets its own sort of unique serial number that is then referenced in the call record. So you can match the record to the actual file. That's relevant to me as an attorney, because if one of these calls becomes relevant as evidence in a hearing in the future, I'm going to want to have that separate phone call file as an individual item. But then what you can also do is get the call transcripts, or the calls transcribed electronically right into the record. And what that allows parents to do is that, let's say you had a phone call or a video call and a particular issue was discussed or something came up, and then later down the road, that's an issue that's going to be litigated or that is now become important. And you remember, I know we had a call where we talked about whatever it was, but I don't remember when, I don't remember what part of the call, I just have no idea. You can get a copy of your complete call record with transcripts, search it electronically for a keyword, find exactly where it happened, where it came up in that call. Then you just look at that call's serial number, match it to the call itself, and go right to that part of the call, and boom, there it is. You've got what you needed. And if you're giving it to your lawyer, you can just give them the file and the transcript and say, there it is. And
Yeah.
keeping those perfect records is everything to us. That's what we do.
I so often, Stephen, I'm telling my clients, if you have a conversation with your soon to be X or X, always follow it up with a text or an email saying, as per our conversation,
Exactly.
because you want to have the record. But this actually, Talking Parents just completely takes care of that for you because it's in the
It
record.
does. If the call goes through our service, it'll be recorded. And both parents have to consent to the recordings
Right.
before they can even use the feature, and they can turn that off anytime they want. You can't receive a call through our service unless you first agree to receive calls and turn it on and go through that consent process, and then you can take that away anytime. So it's not like the other parents just be calling you up immediately. But that's exactly right. You'd be able to have a perfect record of all that. But you bring up a great point there, talking about the recommendation that we often would give parents, that if you have a discussion about the kids somewhere or a phone call or something, follow it up with a written note. Hey, per our discussion, this is what we agreed on, right? And that is something that I'm getting a lot of professionals in the industry and judges to also come around to seeing. A lot of times we think that a service like Talking Parents is only useful for the really bad situations where it's just complete vitriol back and forth. They don't like each other and it's just awful. And it is, it's great for those cases. But it's also really great for cases where people get along really well at the time. And a lot of courts don't realize that they should be ordering people to use a service like Talking Parents, even when the parents get along, because as we all know, parents who get along well now, two major things come up. One is a relocation, and two being a new partner.
Yeah.
And when that happens, people tend to start saying, well, wait a minute. I let a lot of stuff slide. I let a lot of things sort of go by the wayside about the kids because we were getting along. But now that you've got this person coming into their life, or now that you want to move here and take the kids with you, or you don't want me to move, now not only do we litigate that, but I want to bring up all that stuff from the past that I let slide. And so, what courts will do oftentimes, and what parents can build into their own agreements when they're going through mediation, even if it's not a litigated case, is a requirement to use Talking Parents not as the only means of communication, which happens sometimes, but to say, hey, look, you guys can still talk in person. You can still call each other on your normal phone. You can still text each other. You can still be Facebook friends. You can still email each other. That's fine. But any conversations that you have about the kids, anything important, where you come to an agreement about something or it's significant, one of you has to come through Talking Parents and log it and say, hey, per our conversation today that we talked about, this is what we're going to do. And then the onus then goes on to either parent if they ever want to come back to court. And we have example language for putting into agreements between parents, or courts can just order. And basically saying, if you want to come back to court later to contest this issue or bring something up, we're not going to hear it unless you can first show that it was documented through the app.
Wow. Right. So
And
the
so
app
that's
has so many protections in it.
it can, and it's a really useful tool. It's a really useful set of tools, but there's no real right or wrong way to use it. The way that some people may use it could be totally different from how other people use it. It gets used a great deal in criminal cases involving domestic violence. So if somebody gets arrested for a domestic violence charge and they get released from jail, they're usually told to have no contact with the victim in the case. But then they'll often raise their hand and say, well, Judge, we have kids together. We got to be able to talk about the kids. And courts will just order them to use Talking Parents. So they go use Talking Parents, but they will give them strict restrictions on it and say that's the only way that you will talk about the kids, and you will only talk about the kids. And if you don't talk about the kids, if you bring something else up, that'll be a violation of your pretrial release. And obviously, and then if there's any threats or anything going back and forth, the court will have the record. And the other great thing in that kind of a really locked down situation is that parents don't even need to know each other's contact information. So the victim can change their phone number. They can block the other parent. They can move. They can go anywhere. And the other parent, they can still talk about the kids without
Right.
sharing that information.
That
So
makes
that'd
so
be
much.
so that's an example in a case like that, or as a condition of probation, or as a condition of like a restraining order. It's very locked down. But then it can go all the way over to the other side of the spectrum, like I was just talking about, with two people who get along great. They don't need to be locked down. They can talk anywhere they want, but they will maintain these accounts as a way to sort of clarify and verify and document any important decisions. That way, they're not being locked down. It's not getting in the way of just their free-flowing, easygoing relationship, but they're still getting the benefits of hopefully avoiding future litigation or making it quicker and easier and less expensive if it does come up.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. So I hear you saying that One way is the courts mandate that they use the app. They can agree to use it. One person can use it. Can you give us a few examples, real life examples of customers who've used it and how it has benefited them in maybe a couple of the different circumstances that you talked about?
Early on, especially, I was much more hands-on with the running of the business and handling customer support and things. And I can recall this happened a few times, but one particular situation that stands out. We had somebody who went to court up in, I think it was Chicago, and they were ordered to use Talking Parents. And the ex-husband, the dad, was very upset. He did not want to use it. He thought it was just a setup. He thought that the other parent was trying to screw him over or something. He thought that we were in cahoots with the court and that everybody was making money off of him and that he was just getting absolutely railroaded. And he was ticked. He was upset. And he was in contact with us. And I remember I ended up talking to him. At the time, we were small enough, I could go ahead and chat with the guy. And I explained to him, that's not what you think it is. And I told him why it exists and what I built it for and what I hoped that it would accomplish and kind of what I hoped it would do for him. And he calmed down and said, okay. But then we heard back from him. I heard back from him, I don't know, 6 months or a year later. And just extremely thankful for using the services. I can't believe it. He's like, I thought this was being used against me. I thought this was just another way for my co-parent to try and make me look bad or get me in trouble or something. But instead, it's had the complete opposite effect. It has documented what I've been trying to deal with and put up with. And I've spent so much time going back and forth with my co-parent. And we have gone back to court so many times. And I've dealt with so many various allegations and things. And my life was awful. And then I got ordered to use this service and I was so upset about it, but it has completely fixed my life. He was talking about how it has given him everything that he ever wanted. And that it has, having these records and having all of these communications out of all these other places, having it in one place has helped with his mental health, having the evidence available, having the records available the way that they are. And that was very satisfying to me to hear from somebody who very much did not want to use the service, who was very upset about it, didn't believe it, didn't believe any of the benefits of it, to then come back later and say, yeah, not only was I wrong, but it has gone completely the other way. And I'm just so thankful for it. And we hear a lot of that. We hear from people who are thankful that it has alleviated a lot of the stress and the trauma of dealing with their co-parent by putting it all in one place. We hear from people who appreciate that it's just made their lives easier to keep up with everything back and forth. And then, as you can imagine, we hear a lot from people who appreciate that it saved them a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money by either not having to litigate something or by being able to resolve something way easier by having our record. And then, of course, courts reach out and they appreciate it as well. And they often have their feedback. And we love hearing from courts either saying, we like the record, it worked out really well. And sometimes they'll reach out and say, hey, the records are great, but it'd be cool if it did this also, or if it had this in it. And so we're always looking for input from users and from courts and from professionals and everybody about how we can improve the service, how we can improve our records, anything we can do.
So let's talk about the features. Can you just list them to begin with? So obviously there's the whole communication feature. You mentioned a scheduling feature. Can you just run through them?
Our biggest core features, it's messaging first and foremost. That was the first feature that we had. I still think it's the best, most important one to use. We have parents who only use the messaging. That's just all they need. They just need to be able to have a place to talk. You can share documents through the messaging feature. So if you've got stuff to share, you can say, hey, here's those documents that we talked about, or here's the documents that you need, attach them to a message, send them to the other parent. It'll log when the other parent views that message. It'll also log when the other parent downloads those documents, or if they don't.
So let me just, for the listener, the first thing that comes to mind for me is, having coached for 14 years, is the report cards, the application to go to on a school trip, like all of these, the application for travel soccer, like all of these kinds of things. Those are things that if both parents need to see, you can actually be communicating and sharing those documents right through the messaging process.
That's right. You can upload those and attach them to the messages that go back and forth, so you can be sure that the other parent actually got them. And so that's all just within our messaging feature, our sort of core classic feature. And you can create new conversations every time that you talk. You can create different conversations for each subject that you may want to discuss. Some of our users only ever create one conversation and just have an ongoing list. Again, as far as we're concerned, there's no right or wrong way to use it. People have a lot of flexibility there, unless they're ordered specifically to do it a particular way or they agree to use it a particular way. So messaging is really the core feature. We've got the shared calendar, like I talked about, where parents can share a calendar. That works the way that you would think it does. And then, of course, we have our perfect records of that. We have our information library, just an easy place to put information about the kids. You could put that into a message, but sometimes it's easier to have a specific place where you can keep that information where it's easily accessible to both parents. And of course, there's a perfect director of that as well. We've got the calling feature that I talked about, so that you can actually make a call through the app. You can make a voice call or a video call. You can get those records, which can include the electronic transcripts if you need them to. We've got a personal vault in there so that parents, if they've got documents, maybe it's a document they are sharing with the other parent or need to share with the other parent, but they can also just put their personal stuff in there, anything they want, but especially like the stuff related to the kids that maybe you're not necessarily sharing with the other parent, you still want it all in one place. This is a really convenient place to put it. So they can use that personal vault as sort of all their child-related storage or storage for anything that they want. And then we've also added the ability for parents to pay each other through the app so they can send payments back and forth. And then that includes payment records. So just like we try to log everything, we try and log the payments. Logging payments is kind of a weird thing to do. It's difficult to do on our end because we're not a bank. And so we have to rely on information that comes back. But I wanted to make sure that when we built the payment feature that we logged all that information as well as we possibly could. So our payment records will show that somebody initiated a payment, that they wanted to make the payment, and then it'll show the step-by-step process if the payment went through and when. So you'll know if there was a big gap between when it was initiated and when it actually went through, you'll be able to see that gap. And then if there was a failure, if we get that information back from the financial institutes, then that'll be on there as well. And so if you've got a parent who's always paying late, then that'll be logged on the record. If they always initiate the payment at a particular time, then it always comes through at a different time, that'll be logged. If it was a one-off thing, that'll be logged. And if it always fails for the same reason, that'll be logged as well. So we let parents make the payments through the service, but then the record includes as much information as we can possibly give you about those actual transactions. The only feature that we have that parents can make edits and deletions to is what we call a personal journal. There are times when you may be having a conversation through Talking Parents, or you may have something that's on your mind about the kids or your co-parent that you just want to log really for yourself. You just want to make a note for yourself. Maybe it's an issue that you want to bring up with the other parent, but you're not ready to yet, and you just want to keep it there. Maybe you had a discussion with them and you just want to write down how it made you feel at the time, make a note for yourself, any of that kind of stuff. You can put that into your personal journal, and you are able to make deletions and edits to that because it's yours. And that's a useful feature. On the one hand, it's nice to have those notes in one place for yourself, so you can always go back and get them. You could go in there and copy a message that you wanted to send to the parent and paste it into a message if you wanted to. But also there may be times when, even from an evidentiary purpose, it may be good for you to be able to prove that you knew something or were aware of something at a particular time, even if you didn't share that back and forth with the other parent. And it would, in some limited cases, even serve that purpose. So you can get a copy of your journal record. And so even though that record, you can delete stuff out of it because it's just yours, it's also a way for you to prove that you were aware of something at a particular time if that ever comes up.
Beautiful. So it sounds like a really robust program. And this is an app that works on any digital device?
That's right. Any internet connected device will work for it. So that can be your smartphone with either a data connection or Wi-Fi. It could be a tablet. It could be your laptop. It could be your home desktop computer. We've had people contact us before saying that there was an issue, something didn't look right, and we would go back and forth, and then it turns out that they were accessing it with their Nintendo or their PlayStation. And it still works through there. It's just sometimes it wasn't perfect. But yes, any internet connected device, and you can access the service at talkingparents.com with any browser on any device. And so you can pull up the browser on your phone and go to talkingparents.com. You can sign in right there and communicate through the service. Same thing on your computer or a tablet or anything. But then we do also have iPhone and Android specific apps available in the app stores for those devices.
Beautiful. How cumbersome is it to get started?
Not too. It's we don't need all that much information to match people together. So you go to the website, talkingparents.com, when you click on the sign up or create my account button, and then you fill out the form. Now, the thing to bear in mind is that you can't use the service until the other parent signs up. We don't want people to sign in and start filling it up with stuff, and then the other parent gets there and it's just inundated. And so what will happen is if the other parent's email address, it can send them an invitation. If you know the other parent's phone number, it can send them an invitation. If you're in court, you can use a code to go back and forth. But even if you don't have any of that, our service can still match you together, but the other parent will need to sign up. Once the other parent signs up, your accounts will be matched together and activated, and you'll get a notification that you can now sign in and begin using the service.
And I know there are some apps or programs out there where third parties have access. Is there anybody besides me and my ex that would be looking at this or printing out the reports?
For right now, it is just between the parents. So if a parent needs to provide a copy of their record, they can email it directly from the site. So they would sign into their account, enter the email address of the person they need to send the record to, their lawyer, it could be anybody else involved with the case, and send it. We do intend to include third-party integration for more than two parties to the record itself, and also for a parent to be able to add on their attorney, their parenting coordinator, their divorce coach, whoever it may be, so that person can view it. But it adding all those kind of features is something that, because of the way we treat our records and how we want our records to be perfect, there are a lot of things that you've got to work out there. Because if we're going to do it, like all of our other features, we're going to make sure we do it right and that it includes accurate records of everything that is happening there. For example, you wouldn't want a lawyer to be able to sign into somebody's account and view an unviewed message or view their record if the parent has current unviewed messages. It can't work like that. And so issues like that have to be perfect before we'll roll that out. But it is something that we do have in the pipeline.
And the most important part being you can forward all of this documentation to a parent
Exactly.
coordinator, an attorney, or anybody that you need to.
Right. So our complete records, you can order a printed copy from us if you need us to, but you can get them in PDF format as well and just print them anywhere. When somebody generates one of our records, that exact record generated at that exact second gets a unique authentication code attached to it. And then we archive a copy of that ourselves and just keep it forever in our secure storage. And then you get your copy. And then if you order a printed one, we'll print a copy of it and send it to you. But otherwise, you have the PDF. And if you order a printed copy, you'll get the PDF as well. You can send the PDF directly from our service to your attorney or to anybody else who needs it. Or you could send it to yourself and just forward it to them in an email or print it out and give it to them. But the neat thing there is that when you go into court from an evidentiary perspective, not that this is something that affects most people, but when you've got a page in the record, every page will have that unique authentication code that ties to that exact record that was generated at that exact second. And it wasn't too long ago we had somebody contacted us. I think I don't remember if it was a judge or a lawyer, but somebody had come to court, two parents with records that did not match. Somebody's was different. And we got to the bottom of that. It was very easy to tell who had modified their record. And that is a heck of a thing to do. That is a foolish thing to do, and you will get caught doing it. But we have a lot of different security features built into how we give our records so that when you go to court and use one of our records as evidence, it's reliable.
I have to say, Stephen, especially for people who are in high conflict, who are dealing with legal abuse, right, and just find themselves with motion after motion and defending themselves or trying to, this just sounds like such a godsend.
Hopefully, the people who are in those kinds of situations, this is absolutely, hopefully going to be like water on the fire. And then for other people who aren't in that situation, hopefully it's a good smoke detector. It's a good fire safe. It can be something that can help them down the road to avoid that sort of a situation too. So like I talked about, spanning the whole spectrum there, I think people who are in a real bad way can get immediate relief from using Talking Parents. And the people who are just fine right now, but want to make sure that they don't end up there, it's almost like insurance. You can have the app and be using it, and you're sort of doing that as a just in case down the road. If things get bad, I will have this. It will save me a lot of time and money.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. What does it cost? And is it an annual subscription?
Right now, we just do a monthly feed. We do have a free version of the service. So Talking Parents initially, you could only access it through a browser, either on a computer or a phone, and then it was just messaging, and you got that messaging service. And we've kept that free. We've kept that kind of access. That was originally a free service, and it's still free. So you can still go to talkingparents.com with the browser on any computer or on your phone. It's made to work perfectly on your phone. In fact, when you've got our service up on your phone browser, it looks like an app. You can still go sign up, create an account, match together, sign in, and communicate through our service through the messaging app. And that is a free option, and so that's a free account. If you need to get a copy of your record, we do charge you for that. I don't remember what it is. It's a relatively high price, but it's nothing compared to what you're spending if you're going to court. The idea being that if you need a copy of your record, it's probably because you are talking to a lawyer and you are going to court, so there's going to be expenses there. But we also offer a free trial of our premium services. I think we have two tiers of paid accounts. We have a standard tier, which I think is like $12 a month. And then the premium tier is pricier. It's like 27, but it gives you all of the features and access to your record anytime that you need it.
Beautiful.
And the great thing about our service also is that if you're in a point in your life where you really need that coverage, you need all the features, you need to be putting everything in there, you're really a power user right now for whatever reason. If you get to a point where you don't need it so much and you just need it as a place to clarify and verify and document everything, or if your credit card gets maxed out and you miss a payment or whatever, you're not locked out of your account. The worst thing that can happen is that if you have our top tier premium account and you miss a payment or you cancel your payment, it just reverts to a free account. You can still sign in through the browser on your phone instead of the app. You have to have the paid account to use the device-specific app. But even if you drop down to the free tier, you can still use it on your phone. You can still communicate through the service on your phone. You never lose access to your stuff or to your record. You can always get it because it just converts to a free tier.
Beautiful. And what a great price for such an amazing support. And like you said, for insurance.
When I built Talking Parents, it was still at that time where things on the internet were free. That's kind of what we expected. And people, when the internet, I'm old enough to remember when it was first a thing. And it's like, man, people are paying for this newspaper, but online I get it.
Right.
You know, people pay for music out in the real world, but online I get it for free. And we kind of got that in our heads that things that are on the internet are free. And I think we've come to see the result of that, which is that the quality of news that you're getting for free has gone down because it turns out people have to be paid in order to provide you with a good product. And so we do charge for the apps. It takes a lot of work to keep them just running and keep them working and be constantly like trying to build onto them and add features and add functionality and make them better all the time. But I think it's a great price. And I think that it's a good value proposition as well, because if you go back to court even once, you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, and that's on the low end. And
That's
if you
what
can
I was
save,
thinking. Your premium is like the cost of 1 hour with an attorney for an entire year of.
for a year, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's sort of the thing. Like if you end up going back to a lawyer and you have a Talking Parents record, then that should be hours and hours of savings right there. So you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars. So it really is. It is like insurance. You're paying a little bit now to hopefully save a lot in the future.
Beautiful.
But there's the benefit of it too. You may never need it, but you still got to benefit from it because it still made your life easier in the meantime.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess my last question, is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have?
I don't think so. We've covered a lot. This has all been good stuff. What I would say is if somebody's watching and they didn't catch all of that, that's fine. If you go to our website, talkingparents.com, just open the browser on any device. We have all kinds of information. We've got information about how the app works. You can see exactly how the different features work. A lot of the stuff that we've talked about here, the different use cases, there's information on there for those. We've got example order language or agreement language that parents can incorporate into their agreements. We've got information for courts and lawyers. And then we've also got resources for parents. We have a lot of guest speakers and guest authors who submit things to us and all kinds of resources that we try to put out there. So just checking out our website at talkingparents.com is loaded with all the information we talked about here today and a lot more.
Absolutely. Yeah, so folks, Talking Parents is a huge supporter of Journey Beyond Divorce. We're a huge supporter of Talking Parents. It is the app to get regardless of the level of contention. I really encourage you to check it out, see if it's a good fit for you. I believe that after 14 years of hearing so many challenging co-parenting situations, it is insurance. It's that piece, that tool that could really help ease what can sometimes be a difficult relationship post-divorce. And so, Stephen, I just want to thank you for coming and sharing all of those details and your passion about talking parents with our listeners.
Thank you again for having me. This was a great conversation.
And we will be back again with another episode of Journey Beyond Divorce real soon. You take care. Thanks for joining us on the Journey Beyond Divorce podcast. I hope you found guidance and encouragement to help you along your journey. If you like my podcast, please take a minute to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. You can also visit us at jbddivorcesupport.com, where our team of coaches support both men and women through our one-on-one coaching, group programs, online courses, and free resources. Stay tuned for our next episode, and I'll talk to you soon.